Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions related to the ratio analysis chapter, we discussed about some of the formulae for the ratios as well as their concepts and interpretation of those ratios. What does each ratio actually mean and how the ratios are useful for the financial analysis of the financial statements. Now, let us continue the discussion with some of the application aspects of this ratio analysis, particularly from examination point of view, as a mode of solving the problems. At a broader level, the problems can be categorized into 2 or 3 categories. Again, there is no need to categorize. Finally, we should be able to solve any type of problem. That's okay. But still, in general, the options or possibilities are only these. Beyond that, there is no much of scope also. So the first category of problems will be that it will give financial information in the form of financial statements, full-fledged financial statements, or only extract of the financial statements, or just some information which has been taken from the financial statements. Whatever it is, some information will be given and we should calculate some ratios. Solving these problems definitely will be relatively easier because all that you need to know is the formula for ratios and identify the input for them from the information that is given in the question, substitute and get the answer. But make sure every time you use a ratio in the examination, always use this format. First, you have to write the formula. You cannot directly substitute the numbers. Any ratio you are using and in whichever type of questions that may be encountered, always any ratio formula has to be certainly written. Then only substitution. Then only answer. So, what you are doing the financial statement analysis, whether it is in the form of computing ratios or vice versa, this logic has to be never missed in the examination. And naturally, what happens if we miss? Maybe we will still get the correct answer, but we may not get the full marks. Then we will keep on wondering, why are we not getting marks in spite of getting correct answers? For that, we have to understand one commonsensical point. This subject is not an objective type of paper. This is a descriptive paper. So, you need to elaborate things. You need to present the things in a more elaborative manner. And you should display your knowledge and understanding of the ratios. That will not happen by just doing some calculations on calculator and throwing some answer. Yes, that answer will give you some marks. I'm not saying you will get 0 marks. But will you get full marks for that? Probably no. That's why, how to get full marks for the same thing which we know already. How big crime it would be for any student to know the things but still not being able to get full marks. That is a bigger crime than not knowing things. So, how to get that? Proper presentation. Simple. Write the formula, then substitute the numbers, then the answer should come out as an output. Input where you will find from the question itself. So that is one category of questions where financial information will be given and you will be asked to compute certain ratios. Naturally, you should know the ratio formulae and you should know how to identify the relevant information for those formulae. That is a requirement of answering such questions. And if you follow the presentation also properly, then naturally you will get full marks. Second category of questions can be actually a reverse of this, where ratios will be given and then you might have to derive the financial information as required in the question. So these two are actually two sides of the same coin, but the way questions are asked are different. First way is a straightforward way. You are just asked to calculate ratios, but second category of questions is reverse. In the sense, ratios are already given. You have to find out financial information, and there also the presentation format will be similar. You should definitely write the formula for the ratios and then only substitute, because without the formula for ratios you cannot solve any type of question, whether it is first category, second category, third category. Ratios is common. Only the way the question is asked and what is asked in the question only changes. So that is another type of question that can be expected, where ratios are asked, are given, and financial information is asked. Sometimes most popular type of question is some ratios are given, you will be asked to prepare the summarized balance sheet of the company. In other words, you should have computed all the details which are required for the balance sheet. So that is another category of questions, and most popular. In general, the first two categories carry 5 marks in general, and sometimes there is another category also that carries generally 10 marks, wherein financial information also is given, some more ratios are also given, and some more financial information is asked, and some more ratios may also be asked. So both to both. It was earlier financial information to ratios or ratios to financial information. One way it was. Now it can be considered as two ways. So financial information to ratios and ratios to financial information, both to both have to be done. And usually these type of questions will be little lengthier. That is why usually they carry 10 marks. And all types of questions have been given in the past exams. These are the broad 3 categories of questions that we can expect. We don't have to categorize the questions while solving them. This categorization is only for the purpose of convenience. To understand that, that is the scope of this entire chapter. Whatever we know, whatever we do, whatever we practice, ultimately, finally, the questions are going to be more or less in the similar fashion. Only to know that this categorization is relevant. Otherwise, whatever is asked in the question, we just have to stick to the requirements of the question, and of course, by observing relevant information in the question. Let us just look at this illustration number 1, which is there in the ICI material. In a meeting held at Solon towards the end of 2019, all these things are not required or relevant information. This is relevant because we are talking about end of 2019. The directors of the company, whatever it is, HPCL Limited, have taken a decision to diversify. At present, HPCL Limited sells all finished goods from its own warehouses. The company issued debentures on 1/1/2020 and purchased fixed assets on the same day. The purchase prices have remained stable during the concerned period, and the following information is provided to you. So what is relevant information and what is not relevant information, that we have to identify. Where the meeting was held, who are all present in the meeting, what snacks they had during the meeting, all that is irrelevant. Why should we care? Company name, just namesake, of course. It is just a heading, nothing else. But what is the other information which is there? The company issued debentures on 1/1/2020. That is one important information in this paragraph. And also purchased the fixed assets on the same day. Okay. The purchase prices have remained stable. Purchase prices have not increased during the concerned period. Following information is provided to you. So what is given here is income statements, and it is not a new company. It is obviously an existing company only, but here 2019 and 2020 income statements are given. So immediately we should understand, are we talking about a financial year or a calendar year here? Naturally calendar year, because even the first paragraph also confirms that. End of 2019 they had a board meeting. That means that is the end of the financial year of 2019, which is also a calendar year. Then from 1/1/2020, they issued some new debentures and fixed assets also purchased on the same day. So when the years themselves are given 2019 and 2020, first thing first, we have to identify very clearly and immediately is that financial year is calendar year. It is not April to March, it is January to December. That is first point. After that is all information that is just thrown at us. Cash sales, credit sales, both are given separately. Cost of goods sold is given. Gross profit obviously will come by deducting it from the total sales. And operating expenses, all of them are given: warehousing, transport, administrative, selling, etc. Then net profit is given. So here no information related to interest is there, no information related to tax is there. Not there, not there. What we can do? We don't have to wait for all this. Or I want in the format I know only. I want like this. I want sales. I want cost of goods sold. Yes, it is there. You will get gross profit. Okay, fine. From that I will have all the operating expenses reduced. Cash operating expenses, if I reduce, I will get EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. If you reduce depreciation also, then I will get EBIT. If I reduce interest also, then I will get EBT. Then if I reduce tax also, then I will get net profit or profit after tax. This is the format I want the question to be. It will not work. What question gives, that we have to take. So in this question, it stopped at here. Because there is no interest information, no tax information, so automatically that itself is net profit also. Operating profit also is that, net profit is also that. And depreciation separately is not at all given, not given. What we can do? Maybe it is already included in the cost of goods sold. We don't know any of those things. We don't need to know that also. Or maybe it is already included in the other type of operating expenses also, on the basis of the assets purpose for which they are used. If at all, let us say, for example, vans or bikes, motor vehicles used for the purpose of selling. Depreciation on them can be considered as selling expenses. Maybe it was already included in that. So we don't need to know that when it is not there. We cannot dig there. That is the time waste process. What information is there, that we have to observe, and we have to directly jump to the conclusions in the form of knowing that in this case was there is no interest, no tax, which is not given. So not there, as simple as that. For all this, you should take 2 seconds, not more than that. So this is the net profit, or even operating profit also is the same. Anyway, those are the income statements of 2 years. For the year ended 31st December 2019, for the year ended 31st December 2020. Now we have balance sheets as on 31st December 2019, as on 31st December 2020. So income statement will be for the period, balance sheet will be on a particular date, that we should already know. Anyway, the fixed assets information is given. 30,000 rupees is there. Net block means after depreciation. That is increased to 40,000 later. Then receivables are there, debtors, cash, then stock. Both 2019 and 20 figures are given. So total of current assets is this much. Already it is given, total of current assets. Then payables are reduced from that, you will get working capital automatically, directly. That is also given. Not necessarily every question will be in the same format. Whichever question comes in whichever format, we have to take as it is. That is the mantra. So in this case, it is given working capital also very clearly. Then total of the asset side of the balance sheet is 1 lakh and 1,47,000. But of course, it is not given with like a traditional balance sheet. Current liabilities are also taken here and that are reduced from the current assets, and working capital is shown on the asset side. It is not called as asset side actually. It is the application of funds. Whereas sources of funds are on the other side, which are represented by share capital, reserves and surplus and debentures. So 1 lakh, 1,47,000 are the sources of funds. So these two are equity shareholders funds or shareholders funds, owners funds, whatever we can call them. This is non-current liability, long-term borrowing. So for the first year, there is no borrowing, as it was mentioned. This borrowing happened when? On 1/1/2020 this happened. Beginning of the year it happened. That is debentures. So that is about the balance sheet of the company, which is HPCL Limited, as on 2 different dates. Now, having a quick look at all of these things, we should first of all directly go to what is the requirement of the question. What is the requirement? You are required to calculate the following ratios for the years 2019 and 2020. Since it is for 2 years, it can be a 10 marks question. If it is only for 1 year, it can be a 5 marks question. Or number of ratios also generally could be somewhere at around 5. Whatever it is not about the marks that we are trying to evaluate the question. It is the answer that we are supposed to give to the question. Whatever the number of marks it carries, we have to give the answer. So what is this? We have to compute ratios, as simple as that. For that purpose, we should know the formula and of course substitute the numbers from the financial statements and get the answers. So let us calculate one by one. First one is gross profit ratio. Gross profit ratio, I'm not writing it again. Current, this gross profit ratio it is. So gross profit ratio will be what? Gross profit divided by sales multiplied with 100. In exam, what you should do, you should write both the formula and then substitution also. But here I am doing directly substitution because formula you are supposed to know already. So gross profit is how much? 6476. And we, by the way, we are calculating this not for 1 year, we are calculating for 2 years. So 2019, 2020. For 2 years, we are calculating gross profit ratio. 6476. So 64,000, 76,000. Divided by what? Divided by sales. How much is sales in each of these years? We have to take total sales. Cash sales, credit sales put together. How much is that? 3 lakhs and 3 lakhs 74,000. So 3 lakhs here. 3 lakhs 74,000 here. Of course, you have to multiply it with 100 because it is expressed as a percentage. So how much is the gross profit ratio in 2019? 64 by 300 multiplied with 100. It is approximately 21.33%. 21.33%. 2020. 76,000 divided by 3,74,000 into 100. So it is around 20.32%. It has reduced. Analysis and all was not asked, but we should know how to do that because sometimes it can be asked also. But answer for this is gross profit ratio is this much for both the years. That's all. So we are supposed to do formula, substitute, answer. Second, what was also asked? Operating expenses to sales. Operating expenses to sales. Very clearly given. There is not any formula we should apply here. Already formula itself is given. Operating expenses to sales ratio means operating expenses divided by sales. So what are operating expenses? Only operating expenses. What is the total of them? The total of them is 49,000, 57,000. So 49, 57,000. Divided by what? Sales. We already know that. 3 lakhs and 3 lakhs. 74,000 multiplied with 100 is common because this is also expressed as a percentage. Again, answer is 49 by 300 into 100, around 16.33%. Then next year 15.24%. That is what? Operating expenses to sales ratio. That has reduced, which is a good sign. Gross profit ratio reduced, definitely not a good sign. But operating expenses to sales ratio reduced, that is definitely a good sign. Let us check them also so that we don't have to come back to them. 21.33, 20.32. 21.3, 20.3. Okay. Then 16.3, 15.2. 16.3, 15.2. 2 decimals should be used, 3 decimals should be used. Don't ask that. It is your convenience. Preferably 2 decimals. Not more than that will be required in general. But if you want to put it one decimal also, no problem. But don't round it directly. 16.33 is 16%. Not necessarily. For percentages, definitely, whichever ratio is expressed as a percentage, use consistently two decimals. Don't have to separately take a decision for each calculation. Take two decimals for any percentage related ratio. Enough. So here we have taken it two decimals, no problem. Next, third one. Third one is what? Operating profit ratio. In this question, in this case, there is no difference between operating profit and net profit. Why? Because there is no interest given, there is no tax rate or tax details given. So automatically, whatever the net profit that is given here, that itself will be operating profit also. 15,000, 19,000. So 15,000, 19,000 divided by 300, 374. I'm just cutting short, but you don't do that in the exams. You write full numbers with the formula also. More elaborate presentation is required. Calculation is different. So 5% in 2019, then 5.08%, or let us call it 5.1% in 2020. So 5% and 5.1% should be the answers for operating profit ratio. The same thing, 5%, 5.08% or 5.1%. That is third ratio that is calculated. Next, fourth one. What is the fourth one asked? Capital turnover ratio. You should know the formula first. Turnover ratio is anywhere. Sales will be in the numerator. So 300,000, 374,000. Sales we know already. That will be in the numerator. Divided by capital employed. So what is capital employed? Capital employed is fixed assets plus working capital. Actually, in this case, it is given directly. Fixed assets plus current assets minus current liabilities, and the total of that is given already. That itself is capital employed, 1 lakh and 1,47,000. But it is also possible to be calculated by taking shareholders' funds plus non-current liabilities. Either way, what you get is again same capital employed only, including the debt. Capital employed includes the debt, outside debt, that is long-term borrowings. In this case, debentures. So 100,000 and 1,47,000 will be the $1,47,000 will be the denominator. That's all. Because it is turnover ratio, you should not do percentage. It should be only number of times. So 300 by 100 means 3 times. So the capital turnover happened 3 times. 374 by 147, 2.54 times. Both of them times. At least we should know whether it is good or bad. Each of them. Gross profit ratio decreased, bad. Operating expenses ratio decreased, good. Net profit ratio increased a little bit, good. Or operating profit ratio increased, good. Capital turnover ratio decreased, bad. Turnover ratio should be higher. That's not a good thing. So this bad happened in the fourth ratio, capital turnover ratio. Stock turnover ratio formula will be cost of goods sold by average stock. Look at the further information also here. The ratio relating to the capital employed should be based on the capital at the end of the year. That's what we have taken. We have not taken average. Give the reasons for change in the ratios for 2 years. That is analysis also required. Assume opening stock of 40,000 for the year 2019, not 20. This is wrong. Opening stock we are talking, right? Closing stock of 2019 anyway will become opening stock of 2020. It need not be given. But opening stock of 2019 we don't know. So first of all, what is average stock for 2019? For average stock of 2019 will be opening stock 40,000 as given plus closing stock 60,000. 40 plus 60 divided by 2. that will be 50,000. That is the average stock for 2019. Now, what will be the average stock for 2020? For that, we don't need further information. Already we have opening stock and closing stock, because the closing stock of 2019 automatically becomes the opening stock for 2020. So, 60,000 plus opening stock of 2020 plus 94,000 divided by 2. 77,000 is the average stock for 2020 that we have. And cost of goods sold anyway is already given directly in the question. Cost of goods sold 236, 298. So what is the formula here? Stock turnover ratio. Cost of goods sold divided by average stock. So 236, 298. 236, 298 divided by average stock we already calculated. 50 and 77 thousands. So how much is the stock turnover ratio? 236 divided by 50, 4.72 times, and 298 divided by 77, 3.87 times, both of them. So let us check the answers also. For the fourth one, 3 and 2.54. Yes, 3 and 2.54. For the fifth one, 4.72, 3.87. 4.72, 3.87. That is stock turnover ratio. Direct formula, substitute answer. Then net profit to net worth ratio. Straight away ratio formula itself is given. You don't have to worry about which ratio it is and all. It's okay. Maybe it can be called as return on equity, whatever. We don't care. What is asked that we have to calculate. Net profit divided by net worth. That is the ratio. 2 means divided by. Net profit to net worth ratio. Net profit we know already. How much was that? 15 and 19. That was net profit, already given in the question directly. 15,000 and 19,000. This is the net profit. Divided by net worth. Net worth you have to be careful. What is net worth? Net worth is nothing but shareholders' funds. That is nothing but equity. So, how much will be for 2019 shareholders' funds? 1 lakh. 1 lakh means 100,000. But take care of 2020. Net worth here is not 1 lakh. Here 75 plus 42, 117 is the net worth. Net worth does not include debt. Debt is an outside liability. Net worth is nothing but shareholders' funds. Or otherwise you can even say total assets minus outside liabilities. Outside liabilities include, in this case, debentures. That also has to be reduced. So 147 minus 30, 117 will be net worth. We don't need that. Straight away shareholders' funds itself is net worth. So 75 plus 42, that is also same, 117. So how much is this? This has to be expressed as a percentage, because we are talking about a kind of a profitability ratio here, that is net profit to net worth ratio. So 15% this is naturally. Then for the next year it is 16.24%. That is sixth ratio that was asked. Let us check that also with the answers. So 15%, 16.24%. That is sixth ratio. Now, seventh ratio, the last one in this question, was asking about receivables collection period. So this is asked as directly receivables collection period, but I prefer and I suggest you that you will do it in 2 steps, not in 1 step. First, let us find out debtors turnover ratio. Then we'll find out the receivables collection period by taking 360 or 365 divided by debtors turnover ratio. So 2-stepped way is better, so that accuracy is not missed for everybody. So debtors turnover ratio, what is the formula? Debtors turnover ratio formula will be definitely credit sales, net credit sales divided by average debtors. But here once again, average debtors is not known. Why can we not know the average debtors? Because opening balance of debtors is not given at the beginning of 2019. When it is not there, you cannot take 1 year closing debtors and another year average debtors. Consistency has to be followed. That is why instead of taking average debtors, you can take closing debtors also, no problem. That is 50 and 82. So denominator is 50,000 and 82,000. Not for this, for this debtors turnover ratio. Credit sales divided by debtors. That's what we are applying. Debtors is 50,000 and 82,000. Credit sales are given separately. 270, 342. 270, 342. So, how much is debtors turnover ratio first? 270 divided by 50, approximately 5.4 times. 342 divided by 82, approximately 4.17 times. So that is the debtors turnover ratio. Now we go to the second level. 360 divided by debtors turnover ratio. So what is the final answer? Debt collection period, receivables collection period, debtors velocity, all are same. So let us take 360 divided by 5.4. That comes to around 67 days. For days, I suggest don't write any fractions wherever. Why? Because you cannot say exactly at 1 o'clock somebody will come and pay. So fraction of a day indicates hours, right? That doesn't make sense. We are talking about on an average. We are not telling that everybody will pay exactly 67 days later. And it will be more inappropriate and actually nonsensical to say somebody will pay 66th day, after that 0.6 days, somewhere in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, lunchtime, he will come and pay. Nonsense. That will never happen, and that is not the purpose of all this. So the decimal in the days does not indicate any accuracy. That indicates actually a nonsensical item. So don't have any decimals in the days, just round them off. Approximately you can say debt collection period is 67 days in the year of 2019. Then 360 divided by 4.17, it has increased to around 86 days in 2020. So let us check them. What was taken here, number of days wise. Here it is taken as around 67.6 days. It's okay, 67 days. 86 days, approximately 87.5 days it is there. Why is the difference? Difference is there because of one more thing, because they have taken 365 days. That's okay. Not a problem. You don't have to worry about that. So if nothing is mentioned in financial management, you stick to the 360-day mandate. If only particularly it is asked to consider 365 days, then you can take 365 days. So that is the better way of doing it. Not necessarily. There is nothing like this is good, that is bad. This is also correct. 365 also can be taken. No one says it is wrong. This is also okay. However, it's only one thing you have to follow, rather than once again wasting time every time. Should I take 360, 365, 360, 365, tossing coin? Not required. Don't waste time on these unnecessary things. Waste of time. Take anything, whatever you want. We have taken 360. This is the answer. So debt collection period is 67 days in 2019 and around 86 days in 2020. That's all. That is about the computation of all these ratios. Now analysis also was asked in the question. Clearly, it was asked. Give the reasons for change in the ratios for 2 years. Reasons. Again, we can say possible reasons. We cannot exactly say really it will happen. We will come to know everything from ratios only. But yes, possibly what could have happened, that we can observe. One by one can be having an interpretation. Each ratio can have an interpretation. First thing first, we observed a decline in the gross profit ratio. Yes, that happened. What could be the reason for that? It could be the reason because of a reduction in selling price. We don't know. or because of increase in the direct expenses, but not definitely purchase price, because it was given in the first paragraph itself that purchase price has remained constant. So direct expenses might have increased or selling prices would have reduced. For any of these reasons, there could be a decline in gross profit. That is one point related to gross profit. That's enough. Then operating expenses to sales ratio, there was a decline. Again, where this has happened, why this has happened? If you look at the financials closely, sales have increased, but operating expenses have not increased that much as the sales have increased. For example, if you take the total of sales from 300,000 to 374,000, they have increased. So how much is the percentage increase if you want to see that? Sales percentage increase. How to get any percentage? New divided by old minus 1. Don't do any big calculations, not required. What is new here? 374. Old is 300. Minus 1. Multiply with 100, you will get percentage change. 374 divided by 300 minus 1 multiplied with 100 means around 24.6%, means approximately 25% increase happened in sales. What about operating expenses? Operating expenses increased by how much percentage? New by old minus 1 into 100. 57 by 49 minus 1 multiplied with 100 only increased by 16.3%, around 16%. In other words, you can easily conclude sales increased by 25%, but operating expenses did not increase proportionately along with the sales. That is why good thing happened. What is that good thing? The operating expenses to sales ratio has declined. That is the second interpretation of the ratio. This can be a 10 marks question. Perfect, possible. Next, other things like what we calculated, this operating profit ratio also will show the same thing, because operating profit ratio has the cumulative effect of both of them. That is why there is only a very slight increase in its percentage. Though the operating expenses are reduced, that's what you can write about why the operating profit ratio has increased. Operating expenses are reduced, but the cost of goods sold increased. Gross profit ratio also reduced. So the cumulative effect of these two is reflected in the operating profit ratio, where it increased only by a very small percentage, around 0.1%, 0.08% only there is an increase. As good as there is no big change. In other way, we can say mostly whatever the benefit of the operating expenses reduction means not the reduction, less than proportionate change in the operating expenses when compared with sales, that benefit is nullified by increased cost of goods sold when compared with sales. So ultimately the net profit ratio or operating profit ratio, since both are same in this case, has increased only marginally. That can be the third interpretation. Fourth interpretation is definitely a negative interpretation, because capital turnover ratio has reduced. It's not a good sign. In other words, the company is not employing its capital effectively. That is definitely the interpretation we can say. The company has not been able to deploy its capital efficiently. That is a statement. That is a conclusion, we can say, analytical conclusion. How do we know that? We are not giving our opinion here. We know that because there are numbers in front of us. Capital turnover has reduced from 3 to 2.5 times. So that's enough. We don't need further things. Ifs, buts, would have, could have, these things are generally not required for analysis. What is there in front of you, just stick to that. These things will be given here. All these things, if, in case, would have remained, could have, all these things are not analysis. Those are all speculations actually. So there is no, that is not required. Academically, I say I wanted you to know that, okay, this could be the way of understanding things, but in presentation point of view, examination, you don't have to go into all those. What happened? What you see in the capital turnover ratio decline? What is it showing? Not good thing. So will you write not good thing? No, you cannot write that. You have to write a proper good word, good sentence you have to frame. What is that? That's what is given there also. That's what we can use also. The company has not been able to deploy its capital effectively. That's it. As indicated by a reduction in the capital turnover ratio. Dot. No need of stories. Then stock turnover ratio, what is it indicating? Again, not a good thing. stock turnover ratio has reduced, which means the company started investing more in the stocks. The stock is increasing. That is also not a good sign. But of course, whatever the stock that has increased, that you can see in the balance sheet asset side also. Inventories have very well increased here also. That is from 60,000 to 94,000. That indicates the company is following a conservative inventory policy, we can call it, or we can even say other side, it is not in a position to sell more. So the sales force of the company is not working as effectively as it should work. That also is indicated by stock turnover ratio. In other words, the stock turnover ratio indicates the average stock that the company keeps, is it increasing or decreasing when compared with its cost of goods sold. So for every cost of goods sold, how much average stock is kept? That's what is mentioned here, which means a decline in the stock turnover ratio, decline in any turnover ratio other than payables turnover ratio is not a good thing. So this indicates a higher piling up of stock, higher levels of stocks that are maintained. So that is the analysis of stock turnover ratio. So the decline in the stock turnover ratio implies that company has increased its investment in stock. That's it. That is enough. Next, net profit to net worth ratio, what happened to that? That has increased. That's a good sign. Net profit to net worth ratio has increased. That is a good sign. How this could happen? Once again, how this could happen? Because of usage of debt. When the debt is used, in the last year debt was not used. Now debt is used. Because of that, there is a leverage advantage, financial leverage advantage, with which the company's return on equity, this net profit to net worth is nothing but return on equity, has increased in percentage terms. That is the interpretation of sixth thing. Collection period has increased also. That is not a good sign. Collection period increased means the company is not collecting its receivables efficiently, or we can say company is following a liberal credit policy. So it is extending credit liberally. So these are the various types of interpretations for each of the ratios. So there are around 7 ratios. Like this, any number of ratios can be given, and 2 years, 3 years data can be given, and you might be asked to first of all compute the ratios and then interpret the ratios also from the trends that happened from 1 year to another year. That is one category of questions that can be very well expected and asked also earlier in some of the examinations. The second question is a third category, as I told. It will contain some financial information also. It will contain some ratio related details also. Again, it will ask us some financial statements also. So little bigger one, we'll come to that later once we are more comfortable with the ratios and application of them in the problem solving. Let's go to illustration 3. Excom has made plan for the next year. It is estimated that the company will employ total assets of 8 lakhs rupees. So total assets is 8 lakhs rupees, first thing first. Total assets, that is 8 lakhs rupees. 50% of the assets being financed by borrowed capital. So how much is going to be the borrowed capital? Naturally half, which is 4 lakhs. That automatically means how much is financed by equity or shareholders funds? 4 lakhs. So 50% by borrowed capital at an interest cost of 8% per year. So on this 8% per year means how much could be the interest cost? That could be 32,000. Okay, these all calculations you have to show separately in the examination. I'm just showing in a simpler format. Presentation wise, for each of them you should show separately. Borrowings 4 lakhs, on that 8% means interest expenditure could be for 32,000. That is interest. Anyway, this is the information what is given. The direct costs for the year are estimated at 4,80,000. These are direct costs. Direct costs, we can also call it as almost cost of goods sold types. And all other operating expenses are estimated at 80,000. So direct costs are definitely trading account items, and operating expenses are all P&L items. The goods will be sold to customers at 150% of direct costs. So whatever the direct costs are, goods are going to be sold at 150% of direct costs. So how much will be sales first of all? From that itself we can draw easily how much is going to be sales. 150% of direct costs. But how much are direct costs? That is 4,80,000. So 4,80,000 into 150% means how much? 7,20,000 is going to be the sales. Direct costs are already known. How much is that? 4,80,000. So naturally, how much is going to be the gross profit? That is 2,40,000. So far with the information, we can easily derive these things. Tax rate is assumed to be 50%. Okay, fine. This is the information given. What is required now? Required is first thing first, net profit margin to be calculated, then return on assets, then asset turnover ratio, then return on owner's equity. 5 marks question. Very much possible to be asked. But while you calculate net profit margin, for that you should first of all show the computations clearly in the form of like a statement, like an income statement. Not necessarily with all big data, all the details, but a rough income statement is better to be definitely shown. Sales definitely have to be shown. Direct costs are there. Gross profit is there. From gross profit, let us say, if you take out the operating expenses. Operating expenses how much? Operating expenses given here. That is how much? 80,000. Okay, take it out. Operating expenses. How much? 80,000. So what is the resultant? Resultant, what we call it as EBIT. Sometimes called operating profit also. EBIT will be how much naturally? 1,60,000. Right? From that deduct interest. How do we know interest? Already we calculated. That is going to be 32,000, right? Interest already we calculated just now. 32,000 is going to be the interest. So 32,000 deducted. After interest, but this is before tax. So how much is going to be the earnings before tax? 160 minus 32,000. 1,28,000. From that deduct tax. We can deduct. We know how much is the tax. How? Because it is given as 50% tax rate per convenience. So that will be naturally 64,000. Right? 1,28,000. 50% means 64,000. So what is going to be the profit after tax or net profit? Net profit is how much? 64,000. Simple. This is first what you have to show clearly. Then only you can have all the other data and other ratios which are all asked in the question to be calculated easily. So now let us calculate all the ratios which are asked in the question one by one. What is asked? Net profit margin. Net profit margin. Margin is the net profit ratio simply. That is how much? 64,000 net profit divided by sales 7,20,000 multiplied with 100. You have to write the formula. What is the formula? Net profit divided by sales into 100. 64 by 720 into 100 means around 8.9% or 8.89%, let us say. That is the net profit ratio. That is the 8.9%. First one. Second, return on assets. So return on assets again is a point to be noted here. Numerator and denominator have to be matching. When we say return on the assets, what is a better numerator? Better numerator definitely is EBIT rather than the net profit. Why is that? Because we are talking about assets being employed and how much the assets have generated by using them. What interest has to do with that? What tax has to do with that? Nothing. Interest is related to your capital structure. Irrespective of whether you purchased the assets with debt money, loan money or own money, assets will generate the revenue. So our target of this ratio normally is to know what is the utilization of assets, whether they are utilized effectively or not. It has nothing to do with tax rate, which is related to the government policy, and it has nothing to do with the capital structure also, which is related to the company's policy. Irrespective of that, whether assets are employed better or not, how that will be shown, that will be shown by the operating results of the company, not the net profit of the company. So that is why better way of calculating return on assets will be EBIT divided by assets. So 1,60,000 EBIT divided by total assets 8 lakhs. Multiplied with 100, of course, it will give 20%. 1,60,000 divided by 8 lakhs into 100 means 20% is what? Return on assets. So that is return on assets 20%. But here it is taken as after tax return. That's okay. Can be taken also, if at all, if it is taken like that. But ideally it is before tax, because tax has nothing to do with the efficiency of the company. So return on assets suggestively will be without considering interest and tax. So EBIT divided by assets will be a better indicator for return on assets. That is the net profit, so the return on assets, second point. On the other side, net profit margin also was computed in a different manner. We don't need that also. Simple, that is, already profit after taxes are there, that divided by sales will be easily found out. You don't need to take earnings before interest and tax into 1 minus tax rate divided by sales, because that does not indicate net profit. Net profit is after tax only always. So this is also not a good indicator. So first one answer is 8.9%. Second one answer is 20%. That is a better answer. Always different interpretations are possible. Which is better, more appropriate logically, not just because somebody told it, not just because ICAI told it, not just because somebody who has solved this question for the purpose of ICAI Metal has told it. We don't care. What is the logic on that? That has to be looked at. Logic is numerator denominator should have some synchronization. Assets are employed. How better they are employed is what we are looking at. How come tax rate has any relevance there? How come interest has any relevance there? Generally no relevance. That is why return on capital employed, return on assets, better to be taken as EBIT. No, I will take net profit, no problem. If you take net profit also, that is not a problem. That's okay, no issues. But interpretation wise, this is better answer. Anyway, asset turnover, this is direct one. Any turnover ratio, sales divided by assets. So in this case, sales divided by total assets. Sales is how much? Sales, do we know? Already we know that, yeah, 7.2 lakhs. So 720 divided by total assets. Those are 800,000. So 720 by 800, that is 0.9 times. What is this? This is total asset turnover ratio, 0.9 times. Let us see what they have done. At least this is okay, this is correct. 0.9 times. Expression is very important, whatever we are talking about. Then the last one is return on equity, owner's equity, that is. So return on owner's equity, again better to be calculated as net profit after taxes, which is available to the equity shareholders. What is available to the equity shareholders? 64,000. That is available to equity shareholders. Divided by equity was 4 lakhs, because total assets were 4 lakhs. Within that, half was funded by debt, means naturally remaining half would be funded by equity. So how much is going to be return on equity? 64,000 divided by 4 lakhs multiplied with 100. That could be 16%. That is the return on equity. And these are the various formulae to be used, and like this only you have to show. This is the perfect way of presentation wise. First you have to show the net profit computation in the form of a statement, then one by one every time. Whichever formula you are using, deviations is okay, but whatever formula you are using, simply write the formula first, then show the substitution. Maybe if one working is required little bit more, then the answer. So you have to show these calculations in order to obtain full marks. All these things without even putting pen on paper also can be calculated, but that is dangerous. If you practice that in exam also, you will do that and you will not get full marks. So while putting pen on paper is a very, very important paper, very, very important point here to be noted. And solutions have to be solved and practiced on paper, not on calculator. Again, I am repeating, in this chapter, solutions have to be solved and practiced on paper, not on calculator. Most of the other cases, it is not possible to also calculate on calculator. You have to put pen on paper, almost like by requirement. But here, possibility is there. Some over-enthusiastic students will do that. I was one of them, and I told you earlier also, I was overconfident about this chapter, and then I came to know the real picture. When in the examination, I got stuck while doing the computations. Then I realized, no, it is not about only just knowing the ratios. It is about more of practice. That too, not only by knowing. On paper, you have to do the practice. That is the nature of this chapter. Easy, definitely yes. Looks easy, definitely yes. But at the same time, the same easy thing can create trouble in the examination if we follow a wrong approach of practicing it. So, I am telling from bad personal experience, which is actually one of the very exceptions for me in the learning process, which happened very unfortunately because of the overconfidence in knowing the formula for ratio. And at the end of the day, what will be their formula, substitution, answer, what is a big deal, is a thought process I used to have as a person with reasonably comfortable with mathematics and other things. But in the exam, the story will be different. So that is why the difference there will be every question to be practiced on paper is important, and presentation is very, very important in the examination. That is okay. That can be just followed here always. Write the formula, then substitute, then the answer has to be given. That is illustration number 3 in ICA material. Now, illustration number 4, you have to practice. You have to solve it. You can consider this as a task or homework, but you have to do it immediately after this class, compulsorily, so that you check your skills of computing ratios accurately. Knowing is different, actually doing is different, as I told just now. So illustration 4 is for your practice. Don't postpone it. The moment you complete this class, immediately complete illustration 4 also, solving it also. So ABC company sells whatever it is, plumbing fixtures, etc. There is one word given here, 2 by 10 net 30. Though it is not very relevant much, but what is the meaning of it we should know. We are going to see that in the working capital management, receivables management anyway later. What does this mean? This is a credited terms. Credited terms are expressed in this way, particularly in USA. Though it is not much popular here, but we use that. In problems, we use that. Credited terms. Credit terms means what? We are selling on these terms means what? We are fixing these terms to our debtors. So what does this mean? That only just has to be understood. 2 by 10 means if our debtors pay within 10 days, we will give them 2% cash discount. That's what it means. Okay, if they don't pay within 10 days, when they can pay? Can they pay after 3-4 years? No, they have to pay within 30 days. See, the normal credit period extended is 30 days. Normally, credit period is 30 days. But to incentivize them for early payments, we are also giving an offer to them with a cash discount of 2% if they pay within 10 days. That is the meaning of it. Whether it is applicable in this problem or not is a different story. But meaning of 2 by 10 and net 30 means that. Whenever you see that, you should understand it. 30 means, in this case, the normal credit period. 2 is the cash discount percentage. 10 is the number of days within which the debtors are supposed to pay in order to avail the cash discount. If they pay on the 11th day, nothing they will get as discount. But if they pay on 10th day or before that, definitely they can avail 2% cash discount. But of course, they have to pay within 30 days. That is the credit terms. Now within this, we cannot say, sir, what happens if they pay beyond 30 days? That is different story. That is not described here. That will depend upon the relation between us and them. We'll have penalties or what. That is all different story. We don't have to bring any of those things here. These are the terms given to them. Normally, in the professional management of the companies, people follow these terms. We look at around us and we think that, oh no, we will not follow these terms. No, normally throughout the world, normally people follow these terms. So 30 days means within 30 days they try to pay. Within 30 days. 30 days is not minimum, maximum 30. So within that only, ideally debtors are supposed to pay. Anyway, that is altogether only an expression that has nothing to do with this question. What is this question is about? They have given the financial statements for 3 years, 2018, 19 and 20. This is all asset side, cash, accounts receivable, inventory. All of them are current assets. Then net fixed assets are given. Net fixed assets means after depreciation already. Nothing changed. It doesn't actually make sense. But still, what we can do, we cannot question the question. Fixed assets, that's all. 8 lakhs they are. So whatever they are, fixed assets are same in all the 3 years. These are current assets. Of course, they are changing. Then current liabilities like accounts payables are there. Accruals means what? Accruals is nothing but outstanding expenses. Those are called accruals. Then bank loans short term. These are also all 3 current liabilities. So these 3 can be taken as current liabilities. Long term debt is non-current liability. And these 2 can be taken. Common stock and retained earnings can be taken as shareholders' funds. Or that can be itself considered as net worth of the company also. So this is the balance sheet given. Common stock means, told you already in American language, common stock means equity share capital. So most probably this problem would have been lifted from an American book or past question paper from some of the American exams, possibly. So we don't care about the source of it. All that we need to do is solve it. That's all. These are the 3 different balance sheets of this company. Asset side and equity and liability side are given. Next, income related data. No other special information is given. Directly sales is given. Cost of goods sold is given. Net profit is given. But of course, you can come to the other conclusion. Sales minus cost of goods sold is only gross profit. For example, in this case, 8 lakhs is gross profit. But net profit is 3 lakhs. How is it possible? What happened to the remaining 5 lakhs? Naturally, those will be operating expenses. Possibly. And also, this case, same. 43 minus 36. 43 minus 36 means 7 lakhs. It should be ideally. But it is net profit 2 lakhs. What could be that? Could be. We don't know exactly, since the information is not there. Could be operating expenses 5 lakhs. 38 minus 33. 5 lakhs should be the gross profit, but net profit is 1 lakh, means remaining could be 4 lakhs operating expenses. So that is the data that is given. Analyze the company's financial condition, which is position actually, and performance over the last 3 years. Are there any problems? Open-ended question. So the best possible way that you can do is calculate as many ratios as you can do. If it is a 10 marks question, naturally, at least 10 ratios, minimum. Beyond that also you can do according to your convenience. But at least these important ratios definitely you can calculate. So do this. Calculate current ratio, quick ratio, calculate receivables collection period, inventory turnover, and you can even calculate total debt to net worth, debt to equity. This is debt equity ratio. This is enough. This is not required. Doesn't especially have any different purpose than you have already. Or one of them you can calculate. You don't need to calculate both of them. Debt equity ratio is enough. Then gross profit margin, net profit margin can be calculated. Asset turnover ratios can be calculated. Total asset turnover ratio. Return on assets can be calculated. And ultimately, I would suggest to calculate return on equity. Because finally, all this drama, why people are doing, to get better return on equity. So return on equity also you calculate, and you ignore this ratio, but calculate return on equity. So how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these 10 ratios you calculate, and accordingly, you have to know the interpretation also, good or bad, what happened also has to be told. Why it happened, we don't try to explain more in details. Why? Because data will not be available. Just by looking at financial statements, we cannot say that. So whatever we can interpret, that only we have to write. For example, here 1.19 was the current ratio, then it has improved, then it has deteriorated. That's it. Only write that. Same way. Quick assets divided by current liabilities, asset test ratio, improved, then declined. Collection period, dangerous, because it is always improving, increasing, not good. That's not good. Inventory turnover decreased, not good. Why this was not taken is because average stock is not there for it. Enough, no problem. You take only for 2 years. Debt to net worth. So debt is increasing, that is clear. Debt equity ratio is increasing. Next, gross profit margin. This has to be in percentage terms, by the way, these things. So that is also decreasing. Very definitely. Are there problems given in the question, that are there any problems? Yes, very visibly there are problems. Gross profit ratio declined year after year. Net profit ratio also declined year after year from 7.5% to 4.7% to 2.6%. Problem. Asset turnover also declined. Return on assets, percentage you have to calculate this. Whatever given in the material here, expressions are not correct. You do better way. So 21%, 13%, 6%, definitely a problem. So these are all various ratios, and interpret them, telling that at least better, is it good or bad. You don't need to go into the details very much. Where it is possible, you can go with them. Otherwise, no need to go, because we don't have much of details here. Why this happened, what happened, whether purchase cost increased, we don't know any of that. But one thing definitely which is visible is, bad thing on the visible is, sales have declined a lot. Sales declined a lot. That is not a good thing at all, from 19 to 20. That is clear. Other than that, we cannot comment only by looking at these things. So all that you need to write is ratios, of course, yes, formula substitute answer for 3 years. Then what happened, you just write and interpret in that way, whether it is good or bad. Is it problematic or is it something which is positive? So that will be enough to answer such kind of questions if they are asked in the exams. Generally, if they are asked, they will be asked for 10 marks. That's it. That was question number or illustration number 4. You have to do that. That is your immediate task. Before moving ahead with some other things or activities, the moment you complete listening to and learning from this class, you have to finish this illustration 4. Then let us move to illustration 5. Following information available for Navya Limited along with various ratios relevant to the particular industry it belongs to. Appraise your comments on the strengths and weaknesses of Navya Limited, comparing its ratios with given industry norms. So industry norms are also given, and what is all given for the company Navya Limited? Balance sheet is given, balance sheet, and profitability statement is given, which is nothing but income statement. Industry norms are given. So we don't have to worry about which ratios to be calculated. Whatever the ratios are given for industry norms, those ratios only we have to calculate and compare them with the industry norms. We have to say whether Navya Limited is doing better than industry or worse than industry. That's enough. So let us look at each of them one by one. Current ratio. Current ratio. We have to look at balance sheet. Current assets divided by current liabilities. So what is the total of these 3 things? Total of those 3 things will be 52 lakhs 80,000. divided by current liabilities. Current liabilities also there are 3. Sundry creditors, bills payable, other current liabilities. 3 are there. So 660 plus 880 plus 440. 19 lakhs 80,000. So 1980,000. So what is the current ratio here? 5280 divided by 1980, all rupees in thousands. It is 2.67 times. That is the current ratio of this company. And what is the industry norm? 2.5 only. So is Navya Limited doing better than that? Yes, definitely yes. So 2.67 is better than the industry norm. Current ratio, if it is higher, it is generally considered to be a good thing. Not too much higher, but reasonably higher is okay. It is absolutely above the industry norm. So no problem at all as far as current ratio is concerned. Second, receivables turnover ratio. Receivables turnover ratio or debtors turnover ratio. You have to take net credit sales divided by average debtors. We don't have average debtors, so we have to take closing debtors only, no problem. No other way. And are the details given about sales, whether they are credit sales or cash sales? Not given. Not given means all sales you have to assume as credit sales. So 1 crore 10 lakhs sales divided by 11 lakhs is how much? 10 times. Receivables turnover ratio is 10 times. So this is 2.67. So 2.67 is also better. 10 is also better. Turnover ratios, higher they are, better it is. So even receivable turnover ratio is actually better for Navya Limited when compared with industry. Inventory turnover ratio, look at this. This information has to be looked at carefully. Based on sales, normally we calculate inventory turnover ratio on cost of goods sold. Since it is given very clearly based on sales, we have to use base sales only. And again, we don't have average stock and all, so we have to use only closing stock, no option. So what is the inventory turnover ratio? Sales divided by stock. So 1 crore 10 lakhs divided by 33 lakhs. That will be 3 point. Sorry. Stock is how much? 33 lakhs. Yeah. 1 crore 10 lakhs divided by 33 lakhs. Correct. 3.33. That is the inventory turnover ratio, whereas industry norm is 9 times. So here Navya Limited is definitely not doing well. It is keeping too much stock, excessive stock it is keeping, following a conservative inventory policy. Whereas industry norm is 9 times, it is only able to turn over its inventory only 3.33 times in the year. So whereas this is a good performance, this is good. The third one, Navya Limited, is little lagging behind the industry norm. That is the third industry norm. Then total assets turnover ratio, same thing. Sales divided by total assets. Sales we know, 1 crore 10 lakhs. Total assets, 77 lakhs. So 1 crore 10 lakhs divided by 77 lakhs. That will be 1.43 times. That is total asset turnover ratio. 1.43 times. Industry norm is 2 times. So here also Navya Limited is doing worse than industry. Not that it is going to bankrupt or something like that. Compared with industry, normally industry norms are set, which are known already to us, given to us. Compared with that, Navya Limited's performance, Navya Limited's situation is not good in terms of total asset turnover ratio. It is not employing its assets effectively to generate more sales. Same way, it is having too much stock for generating the sales. Either it is not able to sell properly, means its marketing team is weak, or it is creating huge amounts of stock conservatively for selling the customers in future, which is also not a good sign. So third and fourth indicators are showing little negative result from Navya Limited. Net profit ratio, industry norm is 3.5%. Let us see what is the net profit here. Net profit generally will be profit after tax. So 2 lakhs 31,000 divided by sales 1 crore 10 lakhs will be 2.1%. only. So industry norm is 3.5%. Here also Navya Limited is underperforming with the industry compared with industry. So not that good. Net profit ratio is also lesser than that of industry. All that you have to write is that. Then return on total assets. Return on total assets, depending upon the formula that we use. If you take net profit, then in this case, same net profit 2,31,000 divided by total assets is 77 lakhs. Then Navya Limited is having 3% only, whereas industry norm is 7%. So here also it is underperforming when compared with industry. But this type of formula, we don't know which formula industry norm is using. So whatever the formula you think, that can be used. If you take it as EBIT by total assets also, that's not a problem. So if it is taken as EBIT by total assets, 5,54,000 divided by 77 lakhs, then 7.2% it has. That is better than industry if EBIT is taken in the numerator. But we don't know how the industry norm itself is calculated. So return on total assets, depending upon the interpretation of the ratio formula itself, our calculation also will change. But if you just blindly follow whatever the formula which are already given in the same material, then you can take same formula, net profit divided by total assets, no problem. Then return on net worth based on net profit. Here at least it is clear. Based on net profit divided by net worth. That's what it means. Net profit is known, 2,31,000, that is available to the equity shareholders, divided by net worth is how much? Net worth will be only this, 48 lakhs. That is the equity shareholders fund. So that means 4.81%, whereas industry norm is 10.5%. We have only 4.81%. See, this is also very less when compared with industry norms, not that good. Again, total debt divided by total assets. Total debt he is talking. Total debt includes current and non-current. So total debt when you say, all of them put together. How much will that be? 77 lakhs minus 48 lakhs. Automatically remaining will be 29 lakhs. Divided by total assets 77 lakhs. Out of total assets, how much is financed by debt? For this company, around 37.66% is financed by debt. For industry, 60% is financed by debt. This is a reasonably good indicator because the company is having lesser debt in its capital structure. Not that having lesser debt is really a good indicator, but still, it is less financially risky. It has a solid equity base. That can be interpreted from this. Anyway, when compared with the industry norms, what are the comments that you can offer if at all such type of questions are asked in the examinations? Quite possible. All these are institute material questions, means each of them is possible to be asked in the exams also. Not exactly same, but similar questions were asked in the past exams also. So what are the comments that you can make? Comments are also equally important. You don't get marks only for computations. Your analysis, if asked only. So this is another problem. Sometimes only ratios computation will be asked and people will give their valuable opinions. When nobody asked, please don't give your valuable opinions. Keep it to yourselves. When it is asked, then you cannot be silent. So if asked, give comments. If not asked, okay, just calculate ratios or whatever is asked in the question. That's all. Stick to that question. No need to do extra beyond what is asked in the question. That is not going to give any extra marks. And it is waste of time. And valuer will be irritated. On the other side, if you write any wrong comments, valuer will think, oh, this person only knows mechanical calculations. He doesn't know actually the interpretation of it. Unnecessarily, we will expose ourselves. So where silence is required, we have to maintain it. Where it is not possible, we have to be vocal. We have to be expressive. That is the balance which is required in the main exams, which is required to pass this course called Chartered Accountancy. Anyway, the position of Navya Limited is better than industry norm with respect to the current ratios and the sales to debtors ratio. In other words, working capital management of this company is better than the other industry. That is one thing we can say. Entire working capital management of this company is good. Working capital position is good, working capital management is good, receivables management is also good. However, other things like stock turnover, sales to total assets is poor, which means again, marketing team is not doing good. The sales are very poor. Marketing or sales team is underperforming. The sales of the company are not as good as the industry norms are indicating. And also the net profit ratio and the net profit to total assets and net profit to total worth are much lower than the industry norm. Very bad performance. So that is the financial performance of the company is poor when compared with the industry, because all the profitability ratios are very much lesser than the industry norms. And the last one, the debt to assets ratio is lesser actually compared with the industry. That means the firm is geared. I told you already. Geared means levered. Geared at lower level, and debt are used. Lower level debt are used for assets. What is it? It is nonsensical sentence formation. Whatever. The simple point is the firm is less levered, less geared compared with the industry norms. So for financing its assets, the company is using much lesser debt than the industry practice. That's it. So these are the various comments that we can say. So position of current assets and the current liabilities as working capital management. Receivables management is good. Sales is poor. Profitability is poor. And financial risk is okay. That's better compared with industry norms. Because debt is there. That is completely not absent, but at a controllable level. Compared to the industry norms, the leverage of the financial leverage of the company is lesser, which automatically indicates the financial risk of the company is also relatively lesser. Of course, you can say the other side of the argument. Because the financial risk is lesser, only the financial performance is also lesser. Risk and return always will be, in general, directly related with each other. Because the company is not taking financial risk sufficiently by employing better debt and using those resources properly for the purpose of increasing its sales, it is not able to do that. It is inefficient. It is not doing well in the form of increasing sales, etc., in the form of increasing profitability. If it wants to increase its debt and use that debt for the purpose of increasing the productivity, efficiency, thereby reducing costs, it can improve profitability. If it wants to improve the sales team with more sophisticated things, maybe giving some more assets to them, like that, if it does, then also there is a possibility of better sales. So top line and bottom line both can be improved. But as of now, with the current position, the company does not have a good top line also, good bottom line also, when compared with the industry. So that is the analysis of the balance sheets and P&L accounts. In simple terms, financial statements of the companies using ratio analysis and trying to interpret the results also is equally important. As I already told, you have to solve question number or illustration number 4, and illustration number 2 will solve that later. And some more questions we'll solve in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.